Hello everyone and welcome to This is Europe, and here's Serbia. Now let's have a look, shall we? Landlocked within the heart of the Balkans, the land of Serbia has long been inhabited, and one of its earliest known cultures was the Iron Gates Mesolithic, named after the gorge on the Danube River, a time of tusks and antlers and pots and sad-looking sculptures. After this came the Vinča culture, expert craftsmen who also sculpted strange and surreal figures. During the Iron Age, the Celts invaded and settled in the land, and then the Romans came stomping along and conquered it. The Romans built some major cities in Serbia, and a considerable number of emperors were born in Serbia's territory, including Aurelian, an exemplary leader whose conquests repaired the fractured empire in the 3rd century. Another famous emperor born in Serbia was Constantine the Great, who not only issued an edict tolerating Christianity, but converted to that faith himself. He made his capital city Byzantium, which he renamed Constantinople after himself. This would remain the capital of the Eastern Roman or Byzantine Empire for over 1,000 years. The 6th and 7th centuries saw the South Slavs enter the Balkans, and this is the Balkans by the way, and there they would develop into groups such as Croats, Bosniaks, Bulgarians, and Serbs. The Slavs eventually assimilated into the region and were Christianized and formed their own states. The Serbs founded a grand principality in the late 1000s, and amidst conflict with the Byzantine Empire, it began to strengthen under the leadership of Stefan Nemanja, who ended up abdicating to become a monk with a cool beard like his youngest son, Saint Sava, in Mount Athos in Greece. They founded a Serbian Orthodox monastery there, which exists and functions to this day. Sava was a man of peace and learning, and is venerated as a patron saint of Serbia, and his brother was crowned as that country's first king in 1217, hence the name. After a number of successive monarchs, all named Stefan, Serbia grew stronger and gained wealth from mining and agriculture, and then we get to its greatest leader, Stefan Dušan, a skilled military commander. He conquered large chunks of land and established the Serbian Empire. His grand ambitions for further conquests were extinguished, however, after his abrupt death, aged only in his 40s. True to the historical precedent, Dušan's successor was not as capable as he was, and the empire began to weaken, especially after the rising threat that was the Ottoman Turks. 1389's Battle of Kosovo, in which massive numbers of both Serbs and Turks were killed, would assume a legendary status in the Serbian national consciousness, and has inspired much art and literature. Not so inspirational was the subsequent Turkish occupation, which commenced in 1459. Centuries of repression and oppression followed, in which Serbia was subject to the Turkish blood tax, in which every few years children were forcibly taken, converted to Islam, and trained to be administrators or soldiers to fight for the Ottomans. The Serbs rose up in several revolts, each of which the Ottomans crushed without mercy. After this rebellion took wing, the Turks ordered the sacred relics of Saint Sava to be burned. The 17th century, however, saw serious setbacks for the Ottomans, after European powers attempted to stop fighting each other for a little bit and take on the Turks together. Habsburg Austria and the Turks fought over Serbia for many years, and clearly preferring a little less limbo, 2 large migrations of Serbs occurred, the people journeying north away from the Ottomans to live in Habsburg-run lands. Then, after a Turkish slaughter of Serbs in 1804, the Serbs took up arms in revolution, led by the commander Karađorđe, who defeated the Turks in the Battle of Mishar. The independent Serbia won, however, was short-lived, and there was another uprising in which Serbia gained autonomy as a principality within the Ottoman Empire. In 1878, Serbia's independence was recognized in the Treaty of Berlin. A year after, it began kicking Albanians out, and Serbia soon proclaimed itself a kingdom. In the First Balkan War, the Serbs, Greeks, Bulgarians, and Montenegrins teamed up and defeated the Turks, whose crumbling Ottoman Empire lost most of its lands in Europe. After the Second Balkan War, Serbia had gained a significant amount of land and was pretty keen on snapping up some more. Neighboring Bosnia was a place where a lot of Serbs lived, and Serbian nationalists were outraged that Austria-Hungary assumed total control of it in 1908. So when the heir to the Austrian throne visited Bosnia in 1914, a young Bosnian Serb shot him dead. Political pandemonium ensued, which ultimately ended up instigating the First World War. The Austro-Hungarian army and their allies Bulgaria and Germany invaded Serbia and occupied it, slaughtering thousands of Serbs in the process. Masses of Serb soldiers and civilians, including many children, retreated as the bitter winter approached. Over 200,000 died, but the Serbs did not give up. Regrouping with their allies, French, Greek, British, Italian. They fought back in 1918, defeating the Bulgarians and Germans in the Vardar offensive. The German Kaiser was furious and sent a telegram to the King of Bulgaria saying, "Disgraceful! 62,000 Serbs decided the war." Not long afterward, Serbia, Montenegro, Croatia and Slovenia joined forces to become the Kingdom of Yugoslavia under Serbia's king Peter I. It was a pretty uneasy union from the get-go. How, you ask? Well, when you get politicians shooting each other in parliament, it's not a very good sign. In this case, a Montenegrin Serb assassinated a Croat with a very similar surname and who stood against the Yugoslav Union and against Serbia's domination of it. When World War II came along, Yugoslavia sought to remain neutral, but the pressured Prime Minister signed the Tripartite Pact in 1941, allying with Germany, Italy and Japan. The Yugoslav people were outraged, toppled the government in a coup and scrapped the pact. The German response was brutal. Serbia's capital, Belgrade, was heavily bombed for 3 days before Hitler's forces marched in and took over. During the occupation, Serbs fought. Left-wing and right-wing both participated in the 1941 uprising against the Germans, who crushed the rebellion and massacred thousands of civilians in revenge. Right-wing Serbian fighters were the Chetniks, who supported the exiled king. The leftists were the communist Yugoslav partisans, led by the Croat Tito. The Chetniks were obsessed with the idea of carving out a Greater Serbia and committed many war crimes against non-Serbs to this effect. The Hitler-allied Croatian regime, however, was obsessed with the idea of carving out a Greater Croatia and committed many war crimes against non-Croats to this effect, including killing around 300,000 Serbs. If the Slavic peoples of the Balkans were to be united, nationalism was unlikely to be its unifying creed. And this was one of the strengths of the communist partisans, who were not driven by ideas of ethnic exclusionism, and whose ranks consisted of Serbs, Croats, Slovenes, Montenegrins, Bosniaks and Macedonians. Fighting together, the partisans and their Soviet allies defeated the Germans in the Belgrade offensive. As the partisans took control, Yugoslavia was reformed, but not as a monarchy this time, rather as a communist state. All opposition was purged and quashed. While Tito ruled as a dictator, he stood up to Stalin himself and declined to go along with his policies, and altogether proved to be a curiously effective adhesive in keeping the Yugoslav states united. Prosperity increased, and Yugoslavia's quality of life went way up. And then Tito died. Without the unifier, the unity began to fray. Heavily in debt, Yugoslavia began to struggle, and finally, in the early 1990s, it broke apart. Only Serbia and Montenegro remained joined, though Kosovo, which is majority Albanian, had long sought to break away itself. While Slovenia and Macedonia's exits were mostly peaceful, problems arose with Croatia and Bosnia-Herzegovina, which had significant Serb minorities. These Serbs did not want to break away from Serbia. What do you think happened? War, of course. The Yugoslav wars were the deadliest conflicts in Europe since World War II. Massacres, atrocities, and the unhappy introduction of the term ethnic cleansing. And after all that fighting and horror, the Serbs in Croatia, Bosnia, and Kosovo did not achieve their goals, and many fled to Serbia, which was itself reeling from heavy sanctions placed upon it by the UN. In 1995, Albanian separatists in Kosovo began attacking Serbs. Now what do you think? War! Serbia began a punitive campaign, but then United States-led NATO forces intervened, bombing Serbia for weeks and weeks until it could take no more. All NATO member states either supported or contributed to the attacks, except Greece. Serbian leader Slobodan Milošević, once hugely popular, was later arrested and put on trial for war crimes. In 2006, Montenegro split off from Serbia, and 2 years later, Kosovo declared independence, which Serbia claimed was illegal. The international community is divided over Kosovo's status. Anyway, as the 21st century progressed, Serbia faced multiple challenges, but has still managed to implement improvements and attain a very high level of human development. And, amazingly, in spite of its troubled history, Serbia has given the world extraordinary accomplishments, spanning both the arts and the sciences, as well as many sporting greats. So that's it for Serbia, and that's all from me for now. Bye-bye!